welcome everyone to the pre-conference podcast for the Mining 4.0 Summit that is going to be held in Barcelona on the 8th and 9th of November. And today we have the pleasure of having Thomas Laurent joining us from Rivada Space Network. Thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Olga. Very warm thanks for having me today.
So, Thomas, would you mind telling us a little bit about what Rivada Space Network is doing and a few words about what your role in the company is?
Absolutely. So Rivada Space Networks, founded in 2022, is a disruptive European company set to build and operate the first truly global, low-latency, point-to-point connectivity network based on low Earth orbit satellites, LEO satellites. And interconnecting its satellites with lasers, Rivada Space Networks will operate like an optical backbone in space. So we provide ESP and B2B, B2G customers with the ability to securely connect any 2 points on the globe without touching other networks on ground or the internet. Ultra low latency and high bandwidths will enable high-class connectivity services to any, including remote and underserved areas. Our constellation of 600 satellites will represent a fundamental upgrade in the availability of secure, global, end-to-end enterprise-grade connectivity. We will serve telecom enterprise, agriculture, maritime, mining, energy, governmental customers, and other vertical markets as well. So Rivada Space Networks is a truly European activity. We are based in Germany with offices in Munich and Berlin. We are tremendously growing. Our current growth rate is that we are hiring 2 people per week. Most of them, not surprisingly for a space company, is of course working in the technical departments. However, also strong focus on legal aspects and regulatory aspects required to run such a sophisticated constellation. So my role is that I'm working in the commercial department, and although we are not bringing our service into use before 2025, we are already discussing with early customers, early bird customers, with huge strategic needs discussed right now, which is particularly true for mining operators. You can imagine a typical lifespan of a mining site is easily 20 to 40 years. And this involves a lot of strategic planning, and we are happy to contribute from day one with that.
Thank you very much for this description of what you are up to in Rivada Space Network. And so what would you say is different about your constellation that as opposed to or compared to other satellite operators?
There are actually many answers to that, at least a few. Let's have a closer look on the commercial part. Yeah, of course, it's a valid question to ask, why does it take another Starlink? Yeah? However, Starlink is something which is addressing truly end customer business, serving internet to many end customers and on all areas they can reach with their coverage. So we are targeting, as mentioned before, rather the B2B customers, yeah, and the B2G customers are the larger enterprises and not the end customer. But also on the technical side, there are many differences we need to take into account for that. First of all, might be considered the distance to target. So many satellite operators are working from the GEO, which is 36,000 kilometers apart from the Earth orbit. And also we have MEO, and we are targeting, as mentioned in the beginning, the low Earth orbit, which is roughly 1,000 kilometers region. Yeah, and this has a huge impact on the traveling time of the propagation time of the signals here and there. But also the constellation itself, so the design of the constellation has a huge impact on the end user, and what we can do there. So very typically is a last mile to gateway, yeah, but it's very typical for those satellite networks as Starlink, as Amazon, and also OneWeb. So it's a gateway-based network satellite which serves as a bent pipe linked to gateway, and there's clearly no inter-satellite laser link in between. So that kind of design will limit your satellite connection to a reach out in the close to 1,000 kilometers. Yeah? It is very, very optimized for consumer and small, medium enterprise broadband needs and requirements. Other players, such as Telesat, to mention a few, they have a last mile to gateway extension with a laser now in place. Yeah, so there is a gateway-based network as a background, and they're using an ISL and inter-satellite laser link to extend the reach to the nearest gateway. So we have still a number of gateways into place, all adding to the propagation time in between. That means all traffic routed to the nearest internet gateway anywhere. And again, the reach of satellites connection are in that kind or a number, a couple, several thousand kilometers. So how does Rivada doing that? So we have a truly meshed network in place. Yeah, all the satellites are talking to each other directly by the use of inter-satellite laser links. Yeah, and that's why, as mentioned, it's a truly optical backbone in space. So we can provide end-to-end connectivity entirely over the Constellation network. We have a full flexibility in the traffic routing. Yeah? We have a truly global reach and a high bandwidth we can provide optimized for security-focused enterprise and governmental end users. So that's the basic answer of that.
Thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. And the other question I would ask of you would be, in mining operations, what are the typical applications that would require connectivity and digitalization?
Well, there are really a few to mention. All this different priority, this different technical requirements, technical needs, and we need to take into account in terms of priority. So we have standard real-time truck telemetry or truck performance monitoring into place. There's even a desire for autonomous drilling and loading and hauling of all the vessels in place. Yeah, there is a connectivity need between the field personnel. Yeah, there's a person-to-person or group communication required. Yeah, work health matters all the use cases of requirements at any mining site, which needs to be considered. It's just starting, of course, with a crew, with a personnel welfare in a way that they have connectivity among themselves. You have connectivity from the operator to the field personnel. Person-to-person interaction is necessary. You have worker health and safety, which matters all the time. Yeah, but also on the technical part, for the asset monitoring is very important to take that into account. For instance, for predictive maintenance, this is required that you have an IoT measurement of telemetric data you need to share with your headquarter. And if you consider that even further, you can even go up to an autonomous drilling, loading, and hauling procedure on that. And overall, normally a mining site is far off any inhabited area. Also, there's a strong communication need with the headquarter required on that. So it's a number of you, and all of these have different aspects and different desires with respect to, let's say, latency, to bandwidth, to capacity. Yeah? And this needs to be looked into further detail.
Yeah, absolutely. But do you mind providing like one or two specific cases that should be further looked into?
So let me start with the most generic one. Of course, there is a need to have connectivity provided on an enterprise level, on LAN, on WAN level, and also in dialogue with the data center networking behind on that. Yeah, this is something that is in place from starting any mine in between. This is you might consider this is a saturated situation, a rather saturated market, which is not the case. If you have a look on the figures to that, the total market itself is something. But we have close to 2 trillion in 2021, and there are still growth rates of, say, 12%. Yeah, so new mining is coming into place, of existing one needs to be retrofitted in a way. Yeah, that the enterprise headquarter, normally based in North America and Europe or wherever, has the ability to have a very low latency, a real-time communication with the operation on site. Yeah, so this is, of course, already done and solved in a way that sea cables come into play. Yeah, so a typical mining site in Africa will seek a direct connection to the nearest sea cable which is in place. We have more than half a dozen in place, and it's a costly effect. By the way, we have figures that we know that to dig a fiber to your mining site, it takes you $30,000 per kilometer in a way. Yeah? But even then, if you have, make a secure connection to the next sea cable, providing reliable data transportation, we have given figures that we know we have 100 breaches in the cable per year. Yeah, which is something which doesn't take into account the recent activities, but we sadly observe in Europe and the Ukraine, but we had right now based on Nord Stream, by the way. So it's something what has a lot of attention meanwhile and needs to be considered for strategic decisions on that topic. So we hope we can contribute and propose our solution here as well. The most dominant effect here, apart from all the technical advantages or proposition we can make, is of course a deployment time. Satellite is something what you can book and you can start operation very, very easily on that. And to move on to another one is a fairly new discussion I would like to bring to the table here for that kind of podcast is let's have a look into deep sea mining. This is something what is rather a new kid on the block, so to say. It's still prohibited in many, many areas and many geosystems here since 1982, I think, by international law. However, there is an expectation that the overall legal situation might be relaxed in the future. And then it's something what will have a huge growth rate. Yeah? Current figures I have at hand are that deep sea mining is something less than a billion, but with growth rates of close to 40% until 2030, a very interesting market. Technically, it's the worst case. Yeah? So deep sea mining is something that is not fixed like an oil rig. It's also not a vessel. It's not a maritime application. So something in between. But if you are forced to provide a fiber cable connection to that thing, which is technically a moving target, this is a challenge, definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thomas, very, very much for joining us at the pre-conference podcast and for providing this sneak peek, let's say, into what you're going to discuss, and also for this lovely introduction. This was very exciting, and we are also very excited to hear what you have to say at the conference. We're really looking forward to it, and using the chance, I'd like to invite everyone to join us in Barcelona, Spain, for the Mining 4.0 Summit. That is going to be held on the 8th and 9th of November.
Very much looking forward to come to Barcelona, yeah, to meet the audience over there, to learn from that industry and to educate on our capabilities. Yeah, this is going to be super exciting. Thank you very much.